amazing. I found a quote that says, "Stories are a common currency of humanity," from Arabian Nights. And what I found was so great about the first day is that we heard stories that we could relate to. You know, the pandemic has not been easy for all of us, but we heard from pastors that it was lonely preaching to an empty room and just not being able to walk alongside their church members when they were suffering. We also gained encouragement that despite all the things that we've lost in the pandemic, we've also gained so much, which is just new ways of being able to connect and to spread the gospel. And we were able to get some words of wisdom from our panelists who are here with us right now, as well as people from the extended panel who were pastors and elders from different areas. And we have the same, almost the same panel as we had on the 19th, except for one who had a church emergency that he had to attend to. So we're very glad to see all of you back. I just want to share again that our format in Zoom webinar, so several people have registered to be attendees. So think of it like being backstage. So there's a play, you're backstage. And then when you are ready to be on stage, that means you have, you know, significant commentary. Just raise your hand like you would in a regular Zoom meeting, and our tech person will elevate your status so that you can be seen and heard on the panel. And I would like to reintroduce our amazing moderator, Pastor Sam Neves, Neves like the country. So he brings a wealth of experience. You know, he was born in Brazil. He spent his formative years in England, where he also met the love of his life. He spent 11 years there pastoring, which he shared with us last time. And now he's in Maryland. And something very interesting about him, although his official title is Associate Director of Communications for the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, he's also a video game developer. So he's developed 2 video games, Heroes and Heroes 2. So I definitely encourage you to check them out. They're a way for you to learn more about the Bible in a fun and relatable way. So without further ado, here he is, and he's going to lead us out in today's discussion.
Excellent. Thank you, Christelle. What a pleasure to be here with you again. Since last week, I've still been processing and thinking of many of the things that you mentioned to try and make sense of the world in this pandemic and in this crisis. And we will go through, Christelle, the panelists again. In case you're joining us now for the first time, you're watching on YouTube and Facebook, this is the right time for you to subscribe to the channel, for you to send the link to your friends and people that may be interested, especially pastors and local church leaders. We will be discussing pastoral care in this reality, and not just in this reality, but in any crisis. So go ahead and share that link with others. Also, let us know where you're watching from. It's always interesting how far and wide a broadcast goes. Just type there on your social media channel or here on Zoom for those attendees that are here with us. You can also type where you are from. If you're a pastor, most of you are, you can mention your churches for my benefit. I'm sure that you know each other, but I am getting acquainted with you there. So let's go through our panel now again, for those of you that are not familiar with them. So first, Pastor Andre Anderson. He wears many hats, including husband and father of 4. May the Lord be with him. Pastor of Shiloh Church and also a musician. He hopes to inspire churches to shift from being event planners to ministry movements. What a great thing. Then we have Pastor Jesse Annunciacion. He shepherds Bramelia and Waterloo region Philcan churches. His mission is leading people to become devoted followers of Christ by proclaiming and exemplifying Christ's transforming grace in his life. Next, Alison Down is a retired nurse tuned Bible instructor in Northern Ontario. Her latest venture is authoring a new book entitled Divine Beauty, Divine Glory, which uncovers who God is through the book of Exodus. Very interesting. Pastor Jefta Lovo A Zimbabwean native, serves as an associate pastor at the Windsor and Living Faith churches. A 2019 aviation, flight, and religion major. His passions include ministry, flight, and music. Pastor Bob Windsor pastors the Nepean Church and is active in community service as founder of the People Matter Project. In his downtime, you might catch him with a fishing rod or a camera in his hand, not usually both at the same time. Pastor Neftali Dorzilmi, I hope I'm saying this correctly. He pastors in Ottawa and Orleans Adventist Francophone churches. He serves God with hope, clinging to this cry, "We are helpless and we do not know what to do, but our eyes are upon you." And that's our panelist, Christelle. Would you like to go through our process tonight and what we will be doing, or shall I just get it started?
Put me back on, please. Yeah, so I'll just share a little bit more about our process. So like we did last week, we're going to have the main panel just answering questions. The topic actually this week is focused more on communications and technology. So it's just looking at, I guess, the highs and lows that the pastors have experienced, the pastors and other ministers have experienced during the COVID era, and what they have learned, things that they can share to help other people who are wanting to use technology to share the gospel as well. So we'll start out with them, and then at some point, maybe at the halfway mark or a little bit beyond that, we will open the panel, and people who are waiting in the wings as attendees will then have their chance to ask questions and share their experiences as well. We've invited more communications and media people this time around, and I'm very happy to see some of them. We have the creator of Advent Tech, which is going to be the next big thing in Sabbath school apps, or it probably already is. So just shout out to you for coming. And yeah, so that's basically how it's going to go. And then we will wrap up as we did before, just with closing thoughts. And we will also be pulling questions and comments from Facebook and YouTube. So those of you who are watching on those platforms won't be left out. We'll try our best to balance the different questions and just address as many as we're able. So thank you. Back to you.
Excellent. We did start with prayer before the recording started. Perhaps we should have a quick prayer now as we start thinking and processing these very important issues. Please bow your heads with me, whether you are in your social media stream or here. Dear Heavenly Father, we pray for your wisdom and your guidance as we dive deeper into this topic of ministry in a crisis and how it relates to technology. We pray for your wisdom in the name of Jesus. Amen. Humans are very good with objects. We have been using tools since we were created. And the interesting thing about a tool is that for humans, a tool becomes the human. When you are using a knife, the knife is an extension of your arm. You don't think of the knife as a separate object until you cut yourself. But whilst things are going well, it becomes an extension of yourself. If you are driving a car, the car is an extension of yourself, to the point that if somebody touches, let's say you're in a car park and a bike, a cyclist come next to your car and he leans over and touches your car at the back just to hold whilst his bike is waiting, you will feel personally offended by it. And he's not ruining your car, but he's touching your car, which is an extension of your body, and it's as if he's touching you. You feel that sense somehow. And there is a lot of research that tries to explain how that works and the idea of self and the objects and so on. We won't go into it. But in every crisis, you need to use the tools that you have at hand. And technology, our computers, our phones, have become the way in which we see and we observe and we present ourselves and navigate the world. They are tools that become invisible. right now, you're thinking of the words that I'm saying. Perhaps you're looking at my face as I'm talking to you here, as I look at the camera. But you're not thinking of the technology that is involved in this process until it fails. The purpose of technology, therefore, is to do what it's supposed to do without being noticed. And every good media team in a local church knows that the worst thing that could happen is, as something happens on the stage, all the heads go like this. As soon as the heads start to turn to look at the PA desk, something's gone wrong. And their purpose is to set everything up so that people go home without realizing that they were there. Mm-hmm. A great media team is invisible. You don't notice them because everything just works. And in this case, our technology that we use for ministry, it could be your phone, it could be the internet that operates it, it could be the social platforms, it could be WhatsApp, it could be all of this. There is an incredible complexity that the world has absorbed to allow us to use these tools as an extension of our ministry. And here comes the point. Different generations deal differently with this. The youngest pastor here, Pastor Jeffy, you grew up with technology being already a reality. It wasn't something you had to adapt to. And the term digital native has been used to describe these generations. So you yield this tool as a Spartan yield a sword because they played with it since they were children. And this, I'm using the analogy of a sword because it can be both helpful and it can be destructive. And that's the same with technology, but it is a part of you. You don't think to yourself, oh, now I'm going to connect to the interweb and I'm going to communicate with my members. This is not something you think of. It's just something very natural that happens. For those of us that remember what connecting to the internet meant in the 90s, it's a slightly different story. Are you familiar? Do you remember this noise? Bing, 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 bing. And it was a pain just to connect to the internet. And when you were connected, you better have a hobby whilst you are navigating the internet because it would take forever to load the pages. Everything took forever. It took hours to download a song, depending on what connection you had. It got to a point where I lived in this part of in my town that there was no fiber. There was, even the phone line didn't work properly, and we relied on this radio connection. And I learned to use the browser without any images because it was too long to load the images. Now, this is a world in which you are very intimately familiar with the tool because you're constantly struggling with it. That's not the reality we have today. The tool becomes part of you as you minister, an extension of yourself. And here is my first question. What are the tools that you use the most? Let's start there in terms of your ministry and in terms of technology specifically. What are the tools that you don't even notice you're using it until you focus on it, such as when I'm asking this question? Perhaps I'll start with Pastor Jeffy, the youngest, and we won't go in order of age. That's not going to be very good. But maybe I'll come to others afterwards. If you would like to say something, what are the tools that you use without even realizing?
Good evening, and good to be back here once again. What are the tools that we use without realizing? Do you mean right here as we are on this Zoom space, or literally
in ministry?
In ministry.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of tools. Recently, due to this pandemic, we are using things like video cameras. We're using phones a lot because you can't visit people physically, but you can still visit them digitally. So phones are our to-go best friends these days. That's okay. What comes to my mind. Yeah.
Excellent. Phones. That's a good one. How many of you can relate to phones? And especially in the crisis, do you find yourself using your phone more? Who would? Bob, perhaps we'll come to you, Pastor.
Well, I grew up with rabbit ears, and I've been a part of the progression all along. And so, we have to use everything at our disposal. It's WhatsApps, it's Instagram, it's Twitter. we live, eat, and breathe right now. If you want to do ministry, you literally have to be connected and in touch with everybody around you through every means possible, because I can no longer do it side by side, face to face. So, these tools behind me, I mean, they've been here the whole time with me. My 5D, Mark IV and my lighting, and I got lights up over here. And, I turned my basement into a production studio because I'm using every means possible to stay connected. And if that means this old dog's got to learn some new IT tricks, then so be it, because the people are worth it. Relationships are still important.
Excellent. Thank you. Allison.
Yes, I find that using the cell phone has become my right hand. I got rid of the landline. I took the jump and went into the 22nd century, got rid of the landline. Now, the thing is, I like to make sure that everything's going to function properly and everything. And I do my scheduling. When I'm going to meet somebody, when I call them, I still make appointments with them. I used to write it down. When I went to the stationery store to get a new day timer so I can write the appointments down, they didn't have one. I now I'm stuck having to do everything on my cell phone, and I'm looking at myself saying, okay, as long as that cell phone doesn't die on me, I will be fine. If it dies, I'm lost. I still like my pen and paper. I'm sorry, but I'm really getting into the techie stuff, but I still like my pen and paper.
Excellent. Okay, Pastor Andre and then Pastor Jesse.
Yeah, I'm not using anything different other than the panelists. Oh, first of all, let me just say this. It's good to be on here again. I agree. WhatsApp has become a friend. Messenger has become a friend. Zoom has become a second wife, so to speak. Yeah, and the reality is that without these tools, I mean, when you think about it, you're not doing visitation to people's homes at this point because you don't want to bring something or catch something. So I'm also a fan now of the cord. I'm plugged into the thing right now, right beside my desk, because I'm looking at it and I'm like, I have 33%. So I'm charging as we speak. That Apple charge cord has become so crucial. I don't need gas in my vehicle. As long as I got that charge cord, which connects me on the internet, I'm good.
Interesting. Pastor Jesse.
Pastor Sam, you mentioned last week about a very important thing that I was not really into it, texting. I would rather write an email, use my laptop to communicate with our members. But since last week, I tried to do more texting.
Oh, nice.
So I have been texting every day, trying to develop the skill to, I'm in my early 50s, and I'm not a technological person as you are. But learning from what I have heard from you last week, I have started to use texting more. It's either through WhatsApp or whether through Messenger or to the SMS in my phone. And I have received feedback from those whom I have texted. So they are responding to text messages, and I would like to thank you for it.
That's amazing.
Now, prior to the lockdown, because Ontario is under an emergency, state of emergency right now, my wife and I would usually go for driveway visits. And so even driveway visits are no longer possible at this time. So we really have to rely on this technology for us to be able to connect and minister with to our people.
Excellent. Did I miss somebody on the panel? I think all of us have answered this. And have you noticed that some people are more open to new technologies than others?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is one of the big 5 personality characteristics. the best data we have on the differentiation between human beings as far as personality goes is called Big Five. And there are 5 dimensions of personality: conscientiousness, extroversion is another one, agreeableness is another one, sensitivity to negative emotion is another one, also referred to as neuroticism. And there is the 5th one, which is called openness to new experiences. There are some people that are very high in openness, and this determines how quickly they will adapt to technology. And I'll come to you first, Pastor Bob. You strike me as somebody that ever since you were young, were always interested in the new, always open to the new things. Am I wrong?
You are not wrong. When I was a kid, man, back when we had transistor radios, you remember those?
Yeah.
I cracked mine open to see how it worked, and then I put it right back together again. I have always loved technology. It has been a blessing. And to be honest, I mean, I was listening to us talk about texting here. I just got to go to that for a second. When I talk to my kids, if I try and call them, they won't pick up the phone. But the moment I text them, they'll immediately respond to me. So they won't answer a phone call, but they'll answer a text right away. And so I've loved technology, and I've been blessed at Nepean. Our AV team are miracle workers. They are hardcore. They're dedicated. You know, they are top notch, and they were ahead of the curve 10 years ago when it came to streaming online and providing an online experience. And so I've been blessed my entire ministry with people who are like myself, lovers of technology, who believe that we'll use any tool we can to get the gospel of Jesus Christ to the world. And so for us, like Canadians, we love inclusion. And what a way to include people through every means possible. I don't care if it's a transistor radio or if it's a text, we're streaming online. We're going to do everything we can to bring Jesus to your living room or your bedroom, wherever you are at the moment.
Watching. That's
Exactly.
great. I got you nailed there. And I've become very good at defining people's personality traits with this model. And I can tell if somebody has more openness or not. And there are 2 characteristics to openness. One is openness to new experiences. There is something new, I'm on it. And the second one is intellect. Intellect is not intelligence. Intelligence is the speed with which you can process thoughts, abstract thoughts especially. Intellect is how interested you are in those thoughts. Okay? So it's curiosity. It's the digging deeper to find out what's going on here. It's generally people that like reading and can talk forever about philosophy and abstract thinking. Their mind lend it to this. Okay, so this is openness, is those 2 characteristics, which means that those that are very open to new technology, they are also very open to new philosophy, to new theology. So in our movement, just before the Seventh-day Adventist Church started, William Miller was very resistant to new things. Okay, so he did not have that openness as part of his personality trait. And if it was up to him, most people would never have heard about the second coming. Who was the person that was very open to technologies, to new theology, to everything? What was his name? Do you remember? In the Millerite movement, who was responsible for communicating? Exactly. Ron just mentioned it here. Joshua Himes. Absolutely correct.
Himes. Yes.
He was a young minister in Boston who was very open to new technology. That's why he was interested in what Miller was saying, because he was also open to new theological innovations and so on and so forth. And the thing about this group of people is that they're always trailblazers. And they don't mind being wrong. That's the point. They don't mind wasting time with something. So I tried this. It really doesn't work. It's fun. It doesn't work. And some people, they get so upset because this person is trying something new and that they shouldn't, or what have you. And this is a part of what we need to understand. There are people in your congregations who are very open to new experiences. And this is a very important thing for you to tap into them. Now, this is laid out in a curve called the curve of technological diffusion. Okay, so this is what it is, and I wanted to show you this because it really matters for this discussion. Innovators are only 2.5% of the population. I score in the 98th percentile of openness, by the way, which means that out of 100 people in the world, only 2 will be more open to new technologies and open to new theories and so on. So what does this mean? That I'm always looking for what's next. Always, my whole life. When I was in high school, I was the first to buy a mobile phone. I cleaned many different rooms in the school to get little money in England so that I could buy a phone to talk to my girlfriend. I had a phone before all the teachers had a mobile phone. It was a Motorola, huge brick thing. But I needed it. Why did I need it? Because I am part of this 2.5%. After that, and Bob, you're somewhere between these two, I'm pretty sure. After that, you have the early adopters. Okay, people that look at it and go, yeah, that's working. I'm going to give it a go. Then you have the early majority. Okay, the early majority are people that they see that it's working for their friends who are open. They also see that it's working for the early adopters, and then they do it. Then you have the late majority. So Pastor Jesse, you are either in the early majority or the late majority, probably around here. Okay, because you're not very open to new things all the time, right? If it really works and I see the benefit, I'm going to give it a go, like you did this week with text. Okay, so that's, I would say you're somewhere between these two here. And then you have the laggards. The laggards, the only reason why they're not buying rotary phones is because they don't sell them anymore. Otherwise, they will still be there. Okay, they don't want to change. They resist change. Why do you want me to change? I don't care about speed. I don't care. I just want to, live my life the way that it is. And this has nothing to do with age. Some people get this really confused. How, in your experience, have you relied on others in your local context for new technological innovations that you could include in ministry? Is that something that you do constantly, or do you not even think about those terms? I'll start with you, Pastor Andre.
Thank you. That's a great question. And, there's a book that I've been reading over the last little while. I want to give it a quick plug because I think that there may be a benefit to this group. It's entitled Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but let me just answer your question by saying this. The premise of the book basically says, don't worry about navigating the problems yourself. Find individuals that can do it, and they will figure out how to navigate through the challenges. So now to come back to your question, what I've done throughout this pandemic for my church is I have sought out the individuals who have a natural bend to being a part of that 2%, and I have met with them to hear their perspective on the how. Because even if I had to sit in a room with a bunch of individuals that knew how to do it, I don't speak that language per se. Now, I've got a cell phone, I've got a laptop, I've got a Surface, I've got a bunch of technology, but I use it on a very surface level. So what I've found for my church at the very beginning of the pandemic, my two go-to departments were communication and AV. And we met and we talked and we said, okay, what do we have and what do we need? And in creating that conversation, we realized that there were some other pieces that we did not have, which would have made us to some degree obsolete without adding to those things. And of course, I'm grateful to the Ontario Conference because they made a very bold and courageous move by allowing us to use 50% of our evangelistic money, which was what we needed at my local context, in order to put these two pieces that were as far from north as from south. We added to that, and then that's how we were able to get on. Now, once we got on, and then I'll stop there, we used that as a means to help show the congregation what it is that we would need to do above and beyond that to add some nuances so that we weren't just Zooming, we were YouTubing, we were interfacing. So once we had a couple of glitches, we waited for the level of frustration to mount first. You know, sometimes we like to fix problems too quickly. We didn't fix our problems quickly. We allowed the frustration to be almost generated in a sense, so that when we started to fix the problem, which usually a lot of them cost money, we found that there was less pushback because people understood that if you don't go along with this thing, we will be left behind. That's not a pastoral thing, that's a technology thing. So by doing so, I have found that with my congregation, that's not necessarily a tech savvy congregation. We're an older congregation, but we have some solid adults and millennials here that are so into the technology, they have moved us into the 21st century in less than a year's time.
Amazing. Don't let a crisis go to waste, huh? Make sure you use it to advance what needs to be advanced. Any other thoughts from Pastor Jesse or Allison? Pastor Jesse, go ahead.
We are just privileged and blessed at my two churches, where I didn't really have to, to tap into those people who are now taking charge of our communication and technological team. But they rose up to the occasion when it was needed. And I have a number of leaders who made sure that church would not be stopping at any time. When we heard that churches would be closed last March, my leaders rose to the occasion, and immediately we were able to form our Zoom team. So Zoom teams were formed, and we made use of the technological capability of many of our young people in the church. These millennials are very well versed. They're very knowledgeable about communications, about technology, and they are now involved more than ever in church ministry as a result of this pandemic. And so this is the same thing is happening in both of my churches, but one of my churches is smaller than the other. And so it is more pronounced in the big church where I am pastoring. In fact, this coming Sunday, our technological team, our Zoom team, is conducting a workshop for all of our church members, because we would want all of our church members to be able to go to that level of understanding of how we could really maximize the use of this technology for our church. And so this is spearheaded by our Zoom team in the church, because we don't want anyone left behind. Now, I have a short story to tell about two of our leaders in the church. He is an elder, and the wife is one of our leaders as well. They have not been able to come to church for so many months because they have been coming to church through Facebook, because every Sabbath we hold our church through Zoom and Facebook. But they were not able to log into Zoom because they don't know how to use it. And so what they miss is the connection that we experience at Zoom. When you're Facebook, you're just watching, but you're not part of the group. And so what they've asked of me is to help them understand how to use Zoom, because they have the computer. They have the tool that's necessary. And so what I did was I spoke to them, and I gave them a short training on how they could use Zoom. And 2 Sabbaths ago, for the first time, they were able to join us at Zoom, and they were so happy. They said that they missed the church, they missed the fellowship, because what we do every Sabbath is that after the church service, when we are no longer live at Facebook, we stay at Zoom, and there's the connection that's made. People are talking with one another. We stay for another 45 minutes actually, just to fellowship at Zoom after the church service.
Wow. Somebody's asking here, Howard is asking on YouTube, Pastor Jesse, is your Zoom team willing to do this coming Sunday's presentation with other congregations? Can they help other congregations to learn how to use it? Is that something that you think they would
Sure,
be
sure. I mean, I could
willing to
open
do?
that up with other churches. I mean, I think this is something that we could really spread out to everyone who is willing to learn this, how to maximize the use of this tool.
That's
I could
excellent.
speak to my Zoom team about this.
Yeah. I think, Allison, you had your hand up, and then Pastor Andre and Pastor Jeffy.
Going along with what Pastor Jesse was saying about, he may not know all the ins and outs of how to operate everything. I'm in the same boat. But the one thing I notice that I tend to ask my parishioners, does anybody know how we can do whatever? And the first one I asked them quite some time ago, how do we hook on to Zoom, onto YouTube, and onto Facebook? I see others doing it. There's got to be a way of doing it. And none of them knew at the time, but by one of my young members, teenager, I'll get back to you. So the next day, after, this is Friday evening, and Sabbath morning, he said, yeah, I figured out how to do it. And he very kindly took me through step by step how to do it. So now we do our Friday evening using YouTube. We haven't figured out quite how to do the Facebook, but it's coming. But we also had I had the opportunity of the nursing home wanted to have a memorial service for those who had died in the past year. This was back in November. And so they contacted me and said, is there any way we can do this? I said, yeah, we'll do it with Zoom, set it up and everything. But how do we get the families who are wherever they are? And I said, I have a Zoom account. All they have to do is sign in, and I spelled it all out, what had to be done and everything. And so that was fine. Now you need HDMI. I was throwing out these terms that a year ago I would never have thought of throwing them out. I'm throwing these terms out, and I had to explain to them what it was. And in the process of the whole thing, about 15 minutes before the service was to start, I got an emergency call from one of the families in town saying, we can't seem to get it to work. It just won't work with us and everything. So I'm guiding them blindly, like some of you really techie guys can do it blindly. I'm guiding them blindly, and they said, it's just not working. I said, okay, whereabouts are you? Can I come over? I'll wear a mask. You put a mask on, and I'll get you set up with it. So as soon as I got to the door, they recognized who I was. Oh, well, come on in, Allison. Yeah, no problem. Went to the laptop. The computer just was not going to function. It was just decided to go into slow motion. And I had 10 minutes to get back home across town to get on Zoom so we could conduct this service. And so I used the laptop, showed them where on the laptop, guided it through, got them hooked up. And I said, there you are, you're hooked up. You can hear what's going on. I would confirm for them. And I said, I'll be back to do the video. We can see you, but you can't see us. So don't worry about it. As long as you can see us, that's the main thing. Went home, did the service, and went back and fiddled around with the iPad. Now, I just got my first iPad at Christmas time. Somebody very kindly gave me an Apple iPad. So I've been working on it. And now I've come into a situation where some of the residents in the nursing home have not seen some of their loved ones for months, literally months. And one of my members was in that situation. She's in the nursing home. And I made arrangements for a very good friend of hers to use my iPad. And the two of them were able to see each other face to face.
Wow.
The tears on both of them when they realized they could see each other. We may not get together physically, but that face to face. And I realized that, yeah, I'm going to be using that iPad a lot more than I thought I was going to be using it. And I got a lot to learn on it, but I will learn it. It will happen.
Allison, thank you for that. That was excellent. So many dimensions of what you said, that the ability to learn, the ability to teach, the ability to enable where objects become, especially technology, they become windows for you to see other people, and that has a profound effect in people's emotion and their spirituality, and so on. Let me read some comments here. We have Ben Sherry asking about Sabbath school tech. So let's go back to that subject after Pastor Andre, mentions his comment on the last question. We're going to talk about Sabbath school tech. I also see here Dean is saying hi from the Oakville Adventist Church. Observation from Judy Booth. She says, would be good to encourage reading circles among the seniors who are lonesome. Even on the phone, I know of 2 seniors who read most of the Spirit of Prophecy over the phone. What a tremendous idea. You set up the Zoom meeting and you just read the Bible, the Spirit of Prophecy to each other, interesting books. And then the loneliness is diminished because you have a sense of togetherness there. Judy Gamis says on YouTube, excellent. At Mount Zion Filipino, we also use Zoom for an interactive member experience and live stream our worship to YouTube and Facebook Live. So that's something there that is mentioned. Dario says, do you know that Zoom is able to help multi-language churches with a feature for simultaneous translation in 9 languages? So here is something, you could set up a special service where you have multiple ethnic churches attending and the translation just happens, and it works very well. We use it at the general conference. You just select your language at the bottom and you hear the audio, the main audio very low, and the translation voice on top of it, and you have a beautiful experience of that meeting. So that may be something for you to look at. Pastor Andre.
Yeah, I want to come and add one thing, and I think it's still germane to this part of the conversation as we were talking about technology. Technology, or not technology, rather, collaboration, I believe is another piece of technology that we have learned to use during this crisis. So for example, we had an evangelistic series for the first time since I've been in this district here. We had an evangelistic series, and as a result of us having the evangelistic series, there were several of our churches in the Eastern District that were able to come together, pool their resources, resources not just financially, but also pull their resources in terms of personnel. And this kind of was sparked, thank you for Howard's question to Pastor Jesse, because when we opened up the evangelism, we were able to create a whole new experience using the technology. We decided not to have a churchy feel to it, because usually when people think about evangelism in the context of Adventism, there's always a pew, an organ, or a piano, a pulpit. We went in a different direction. Now, as a result of collaborating, we had different churches, different generations, different perspectives, and we were able to baptize as cumulatively throughout the series over 30 individuals as a result of the collaboration. Amen. So, one of the things that I challenge those that are watching right now is don't be afraid to work with another church. Don't be afraid to reach across the pew and say, you've got a camera, I've got a microphone, let's do church together. It doesn't make sense to have 2 haphazard programs when you can have one that is well done by collaborating. So of course, I guess maybe the point that I'm making at this juncture of the conversation is collaboration is as important as Zoom, WhatsApp, and all of the other things, because together we have a perspective that we don't have. Blind spots are what everybody has during this pandemic because we've never navigated through this before.
Excellent point. Sabrina Jacques Rowe, she says that the local church, look at this, they've created a toll-free number for audio-only services to church programs. It's used by listeners all around the globe. So, okay, you have difficulty with technology. You've mastered the phone. You can dial something. That's great. Here it is. Dial it in and you'll be able to access the church services. That's good. Another one here is a sentence. Dean says, if the church is not in the virtual world, the church is not in the real world. that's a sad reality right now, that you don't have a choice really. The connection that we share with each other requires that we connect, and we use some technology to connect, at least at this point. Pastor Jeffy, you had some thoughts from before.
Yes, I'm gonna stand up here. It's commercial break because I've been sitting down for a long time. But my mind was racing when I heard a lot of people talking, and I forgot the question, but I think we're all just dialoguing here on how we
Yes.
could possibly create good virtual spaces for all of our congregations to thrive. I know recently we discovered OBS. I don't know if some people have used OBS. I know there are different other options, alternatives, but my Pastor Kolovenko showed me OBS, which allows you on Zoom to have smooth video and audio visuals. So instead of sounding more echoey and more dry, we have been using OBS, and I think it has been fantastic. But allow me as a young person to throw in a question here that might provoke some thoughts, and maybe if there are answers here that might be given, that would be great. Most of the individuals that have spoken before me, it seems there are a lot of younger generations who are involved in this media vehicle, especially during this virtual time where we are all worshiping online, trying to visit people online. So how has it been going in your church in terms of recognizing these young people? Because you realize that we live in a different generation where maybe in the olden day, if you are to participate in church, I know my dad has a lot of placards written, "Thank you for coming to preach," but it doesn't cut it with young people. So how have you put that balance in terms of involving them and keeping them inspired? Because we did realize last year in March, April, one of our fantastic young fellas here at our church came in and was very dynamic. I mean, in creating platforms that we didn't know existed. But I guess as we went ahead through the pandemic, there seems to be some energy levels where people seem worn out, maybe because some are not appreciated, or maybe they're the only people who know how to do it. So how do we grapple with this season that we're in, especially as we deal with our younger people?
Okay, anyone? Pastor Jesse, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Pastor Jeffy, about that question. I'm reading some of the comments here, and Sister Maria McLean has mentioned about burnout among some of our volunteers, because they have been doing this for many months already, week after week after week, and sometimes not only on the Sabbath, but also on some other days. In my church, we do Zoom meetings as well on Wednesdays and on Fridays, and sometimes we need to host. We need them hosting us as well for Sunday activities. And so burnout is a real issue. And that's why one of the reasons why we are conducting our Zoom training this coming Sundays, because we want to encourage other church members, whether they are young or old, to increase their interest, whether they might want to involve themselves in this Zoom ministry as well. So hopefully we could be able to get more individuals, more members joining, participating in this particular field of ministry that has opened up for the church. Now, in terms of appreciating our volunteers, specifically those who are in this technology, what we have done as a church is we have towards this last few months of the year, aside from mentioning their names every Sabbath, we try to mention their names, we appreciate them, we tell them how grateful the church is with the things that they are doing in the church. We have given them tokens, gift cards, and we have also paid for some of the cost that they are having for in their homes. We are paying part of their internet. as a church, we have made a decision that we want to do that for those who are hosting us on a regular basis. And so these are little things that we do in order to let them feel and let them know that they are truly appreciated.
Yes. A lot of comments here about this, how to manage local teams, media teams. And this is something that I've been following very closely. In my churches, I always had the media team working very closely with me. And also a lot of experience with my father-in-law leading a media ministries team for over 20 years. And I've noticed a lot of things about it. So let me share just a few insights about local teams. After I read a couple of comments here, that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to talk about Sabbath School Tech, because we missed that. From Russell Preddy, how would you suggest that the program format or content be changed to make it more fitting for broadcast video format and hold the audience's interest? So that's a good question about how to make it more interesting. It's also, we have Samantha saying that the church communicators are doing a log during this pandemic. How can we get other members of the church to pitch in so that the burden is lightened? Okay, so that's another good question. You could have people with technical expertise, says Howard Runes, to train others. This will have multiple benefits, including having a longer pool of AV tech support staff. Okay. Another comment here, the process I'm using to look out to members or sending a text, email, voice messages, and prayer, and letting them know that we are ready to bridge in any way we can. Okay. And do you have any text messages, apps, software recommended for churches to connect with members? So we're going to come back to some of this here. In my experience, you don't have a good media team is a media team that are trying to hold them back. They want to go forward. They want to do more. They want to reach more. A media team that is not there yet is a media team that you always have to encourage them. It's like, okay, have we tried new things and so on? So you need at least one person there who is an innovator, the early adopter. Usually it's not a good idea to have the leader as an early adopter, because all they will keep sending you is more and more budgets for new equipment. Okay, because they want to play with new toys. That's what they want to do. So beware of that, right? You need somebody that is open to new experiences, but not so much that they're constantly, wanting you to spend money. And you don't want to hear from them. It's like, okay, Pastor, do you really value this or not? Because we do need to upgrade our cameras. Why? Because it will increase the quality of the images. But that would take a lot of, all of that conversation. So it's either you take mature early adopters, people that understand that you're not going to have all the equipment you ever want. And just because it's exciting, you're not going to buy it. So that's mature early adopters is fine. The next thing is you need to create an environment for them. And Pastor Jesse alluded to this. It's like, okay, what do you need? What can I do to help you? And then they go ahead and do it. It's the book that you mentioned, Pastor Andre. It's who, not how. Let them figure out those problems. And there is a book called Drive by Daniel Pink, which presents pastors read this book. It is incredibly important. It is the foundation of motivation, why people do what they do. And any fool can lead a company. So does the saying goes. But you need an amazing leader to lead volunteers. When you don't have the carrot of the salary and the stick of firing, that's the mark of a great leader who can lead volunteers to work day in and day out. How do you get to that? And so I want to share with you the 3 principles which apply to the media team, and it applies to all of your teams, but especially media. So let me share that with you. Here it is. First one is autonomy. The second one is mastery. The third one is purpose. Autonomy. Don't tell them what to do. I made this mistake so many times. Let them figure out what to do. Autonomy. Another mistake that pastors make, and conference presidents make for that matter, is that they add too much value to a project. So what does this mean? An AV person comes to you, Pastor Bob, and says, Here's my project. This is what I'm thinking of doing. Now, if you're anything like me, by the time they finish the sentence, our mind is already running. We love the idea. And you could do this, you could do that, you could do the other. And the mistake that I've always made all my life is that I would tell them this. I would say, I'm so excited because you could do this, you could do that, you could do this. And, in thinking that by the time they leave, they're going to be more motivated to go and do it. But here's the nuance. You've just taken the idea from them. When they leave, the idea is no longer theirs, is now partially yours. They know they won't have the autonomy necessary, and they will not have the same level of responsibility and of delivering the idea. So what I started to do over the last few years is that I stop adding value. A member of my team comes, and even if it is a freelancer, we're working now with over 700 freelancers. So when a freelancer comes and has an idea, and they say, Pastor Sam, we could do this. It happened today. It happened yesterday. Every day, pretty much, it happens. And we could do this. My mind is racing. I know exactly what the pitfalls are, how to make it better. But I learned to shut up and just say, that's a great idea. Let's try and do it. Go ahead and see what you need and let me know. When they leave, it's their idea. They have the autonomy to try and do it in different ways, and you hold them accountable, but they need autonomy. If you start telling the AV what to do all the time, you will lose them. So they need autonomy. The second thing they need is mastery. Can they get better? And this is very difficult because when you are a volunteer, the last thing you need to tell the volunteer is stop moving the camera. We don't do zooms in and out. That's bad. Just keep it together. Or, telling people what to do when they're volunteers is an art. The best technique my father-in-law came up with, and I use it all the time, is let's watch the broadcast together. Once a month, bring the whole team and let everybody watch it together. You don't need to tell them that they move the camera too much. They can see it. They themselves say, you know what, I'm going to start moving the camera less. That's mastery. You trying to get better at something, and always point out you need to get better, and so on and so forth. And then comes the last point, which is really where you should thrive as a pastor. And I'm not talking to the panelists here. I'm talking to all the pastors in the world who are listening to this. What you really need to do is provide purpose. Have a call once a week, once every couple of weeks, or send some texts about how meaningful their work is, how it matters to you, how it matters to the church, how it matters to the world. When you get a message from somebody saying, I really liked your sermon and it impacted my life, don't send the message, but just mention it to the AV team. Have a WhatsApp group with the whole AV team that you are part of, and you just let them talk. But every now and again you come back, someone not from our church just told me how much the service impacted their lives. And I want to thank you for each and every button that you've pressed to make that happen. And that's purpose. You're providing them purpose and so on. So those are just some techniques that I've seen to motivate this team. Applies to other teams, but media especially, because media people can be very annoying, especially if they are perfectionists. And that's why they are there. We need them exactly where they are. And they have lots of feelings about everything, and you need to respect their feelings and so on and so forth. Okay. Let's talk about Sabbath school. Let me see somebody that hasn't. What's your experience, Allison, of Sabbath school and technology? And then Pastor Bob, I want to hear from you as well.
For the most part, our Sabbath school is going through the Sabbath school lesson.
On Zoom?
On Zoom, yes.
Everybody together or different groups?
Everybody together. Our congregation here in Northern Ontario is, we don't have even enough members to be called a church.
Okay.
And so we all gather together. There might be 8 or 9 of us on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we're just in the one room. We don't have breakout sessions and so forth.
Yeah.
I've learned how to do this, how to do breakout sessions, and I've been wanting to do it. And so I told the pastor that, the next time you ask me to do family prayer, we're going to I'm going to break it out, count the number of people. If we have 8 people, I'll have 4 breakout rooms, 2 in each one.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll take it from there, see what happens. So
did it work?
No, I still have to.
Okay, you're gonna try
The
that out.
pastor is very hesitant in doing it. He said, that could cause a little bit of disruption for them. And I said, I'm telling them ahead of time I'm doing it. Well, they may not want to be with the person they're going to be with. And I said, tough. Yeah, like but yeah. So yeah, we're
Okay.
used to Zoom, but I am trying to encourage them to look at doing the breakout because that's a wonderful, wonderful medium.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Excellent. Pastor Bob, Sabbath School. What tech do you use? How are things going with that?
We tried multiple things. First of all, as I shared last week, we have 52 cultures represented at our church, and all of them loved going back home to connect with other people in their Sabbath school programs. So at Nepean, we provided several things for individuals. We set up Zoom classrooms for youth, young adults. All the Sabbath school divisions had a teacher teaching Zoom Sabbath school. And then we did something that was a little bit more polished for the adults. And that was, in the beginning, we were doing a pre-recorded worship service, and we were doing a pre-recorded Sabbath school program, so that if there were any mistakes or any editing that needed to be done, we could do it. Because we had set up a Sabbath school discussion panel. And every week I would write the script, like Hope Sabbath School, only I didn't have 12 panelists. I had 3 elders working with me, and I wrote the script, and different people took different parts, and we had lighting, we had cameras, we had a full studio production going on, and it looked really good. We had a great following, viewership went up. So we were offering the scripted program, pre-recorded, plus we were also offering the Zoom Sabbath School classes. So, and then we had the opportunity to reopen, and then they just shut us down. So now everything right now is Zoom Sabbath School classes, and our Zoom Sabbath School class broadcasts to YouTube and to Facebook.
Okay. Excellent. Let's bring in the extended panel. There are some other questions and thoughts, I'm sure, from some of the attendees who would join us, and the tech team will start bringing them in as we read some more comments over here. The youth and young adults at Nepean, that's your church, right, Pastor Bob? Okay. They have a great connection through Sabbath School. I have noticed each young adult use the Sabbath School material as an opportunity to enhance their personal devotion. Some of them have gained the courage to even teach. I have noticed that in the last 10 years, 5 years, let's say, Sabbath School has taken a whole new dimension when it comes to people's interest. They may not have attended the actual, 9 o'clock, wherever it is, service or Sabbath School, because it's always empty, it seems. But they've taken a real interest on YouTube. Sabbath School videos always do very well. On, themselves, people connect. Have you noticed that as well, or is it just me? Pastor Jeffy, you're nodding your head there, so I'll take your comment.
Yes, you're right. When the pandemic hit, we were doing Sabbath School in smaller numbers. We'd bring panelists on the stage because that was still legal within our jurisdiction, and we would film given different people were participating. But whenever we would post our Sabbath School, it gains a lot of traction because I guess that's the time which people feel like they can engage more during the divine, except the divine service, where during the divine service, you need to just sit and listen. But one other thing I was going to share is that during our Sabbath School time, what we have done, we have allowed the breakout room button. We have kind of, what's the word there that I'm looking, was exploited the breakout room button, where we allow people to go into smaller groups, and that increases more participation, because in as much as you can have 100 people on a Sabbath School panel right here on Zoom, not everybody's going to participate. So degrouping them into those smaller numbers allows them to participate. What I would say for our young people, what we've done, this might get me in trouble with some kosher Adventist members, but allow me to say, is this a safe space to give this idea?
Not so sure, but go ahead. I'm just joking. Go.
All right.
What do you have?
So instead of the 9:30 a.m. usual time, we opted to try out at 4 p.m. Because
What?
come on, young people, don't get my credentials revoked. Okay, the young
You should
people
wait until
sometimes.
ordination to come up with those things.
I know, but some young people have a hard time waking up, so it's good to just get them at the right time when they are up.
Of
And
course.
even during the week, we created a teaspoon of hope segment, which does not necessarily coincide with the Sabbath School quarterly, but that allowed the young people, because they are on Instagram, and that's where you catch them every second. So
Right.
I would go live with different guests for a 30-minute session and have a dialogue, and they ask questions, and it's a
Excellent
typical
idea.
Bible study. So I'm encouraging those who do with young people to think outside of the Zoom, because I'm zoomed out and ready to get out of Zoom, but Lord have mercy on me.
Thank you for that. Vitali and Amara, you guys have started Advent Tech, and Sabbath School is something that you focus on. When did you start that? Why? And how is it going?
Hello, everyone. And yeah, it's a great question. And our ministry is called Adventist, and we were all passionate about Sabbath School from the very beginning, and that's what united us, and that's what gave us the purpose, that you talked about. And funny enough, we are actually all volunteers, and Sabbath School was always part of our interest in the church. And when and we could look at young people as mostly innovators and early adopters, as you were mentioning, because we have all these ideas and we try all these new things. And back in 2012, 2013, when smartphones were just getting popular, I personally it's a funny story. I personally did not have membership in Canada, where I just moved in. So I was looking for ways to study my Sabbath School, and owning a smartphone basically made me think, is there anything I can do about it? The PDF, for example, format wasn't the best layout for a tiny handheld device. So that was sort of the spark, the idea that prompted me to, as a software engineer, to think about how can I apply my own skill and my own talent to do. And almost 7-8 years later, a lot of people start joining and supporting our volunteer movement. And at this point, we have a lot of people are using Sabbath School on their smartphone devices, and we have all the statistics and analytics to tell that more and more people are adopting. And especially after the pandemic, we've been hearing a lot of people looking at the ways that they can extend their study, because it allows us to reach so many people, pretty much sitting, in one place, and not dealing with publishing, not dealing with other things that involves in the print. At the same time, we see the opportunity for the world church to use more technology, because there's no other way for us to get connected. And at Adventist, this is one of the things that, and there are a lot of anecdotal stories that we hear from people from different countries. So our app supports more than 50 languages, and you can study if you speak another language, you can switch. And a lot of people from different countries have access, and they don't even realize that people who actually put this app, they don't necessarily speak that language. And we hear a lot of responses in the native language, so we have to use, again, tools and technology to do that. We just use Google Translate or other translation services to respond to them and create this personal environment. And one of the most motivating things that we keep hearing is that in countries where Christianity is prohibited, like Iran, like Laos, people actually study Sabbath School as truly devotional book, as Christian books. And what they do is they study on their smartphone, because that's one of the things that government hasn't really been able to infiltrate and to sort of access from people's lives. So this has always been a motivation for us to see the bigger purpose, and at the same time, having a lot of technology allows you to understand what users need and to do it pretty much in real time. And that's one of the reasons I think it keeps motivating us. Even after 7 years, it's just getting more interesting to do that and be part of the total member involvement.
Amazing. You guys are such an inspiration. Pastor Andre, you were talking about let the problem exist before somebody tries to solve it, right? So you've got you don't have that problem sometimes with the global church, because it will take us a while until we are ready to solve a problem. And this is where church members step in and say, you know what? Enough is enough. PDFs are not the answer for mobile phones. Let me get involved with the gifts God gave me and call a team together. And together we're going to do this great thing and serve the world. And that's exactly what you guys have done. Here at the General Conference, I work with a team of communicators and technologists. Our web manager, his name is Brent Harding. We talk often about how great this project is. And if there is anything we can do to help, let us know, because it's a great innovation that came from members. It's fantastic. Amara, you're a part of the group too. What do you do exactly?
That's right. Not only is there an app that has been developed for the free Sabbath school, but we also recognize the need for a social media presence. So as of late, we have acquired a few Instagram handles that look a little more official. For example, at SDA Sabbath School, very official, and many people will just search for Sabbath School, and one of the first one that pops up they can follow. We do a daily post of the Sabbath School lesson. We do weekly discussion questions that people can use in their local Sabbath School discussions, or they can use in their conversations with their peers to probably incorporate something about spiritual life. Maybe their peers are non-Adventist or non-believers. So we try to make our questions more open to spread the gospel that way. We are also trying out collaborations with various ministries to show that Sabbath School is a tool and powerful resource for both your personal devotion and for evangelism. And so we encourage you to not only download the app and be blessed by that experience, but be engaged all around the world. And there's Instagram, there's Facebook, there's the website that we have. And we know that God can use not only this ministry, but encourage others to start their own ministries too, and to have that same passion. Once again, we're all volunteers. We have that on fire motivation that the Lord has given us the Great Commission, and we have to fulfill it. We need to do something about it. And as a young person, how can I do that? Using technology is very, very important.
Excellent. How inspiring. Thank you, Amara. It's a free app, no ads. I encourage you, if you're listening to this and you haven't already, it's a simple, very simple, wonderful way of studying the lesson. You can download it in your favorite app store and subscribe to the social media channels. Thanks, guys, for this tremendous service to the World Church. If there's anything that the General Conference can do to help you, get in touch with us. We would love to really empower this ministry to go forward. We have our own apps for Sabbath School. The truth is, we need another 60 types of different apps that reach people with the great content of salvation. So it's a great ministry that you have there. Let's see other comments. Lots of people saying the same thing on YouTube about that. Let me see. Kirk Nugent is here. Hey, Kirk, let me read what it said about it. You have panels on live streaming, social media marketing, etc. You can speak very well about this topic. And yeah, okay, let's go. I heard your name somewhere quite regularly, actually.
I've been doing some work with Brent. You just mentioned Brent Harding. I've been doing some work with him. I did a training session with him and Wholeness, Corel Wholeness, and I think the team there on Ecamm Live, and using that for a platform to be able to go into Zoom and some other things as well. But just loving the conversation here today. Was a part of the discussion last year, the last conference that Ontario Conference had on communications. Was a really great experience. So I see some people are saying stuff in the chat. Good to see you guys again. Sam, thank you so much for being the host here. I just agree with what some of the other previous speakers were saying in terms of just getting out there. What I love about the internet and this time that we're in is that there's no committee action, there's no vote necessary, right? I mean, the internet is just free to everyone. And so whatever God has placed on your heart to do, I think in this moment, now more than ever, you have the ability to get out there and do it. One of the things I love to share with folks is just shifting mindsets around ministry. I think we like to put ministry in a box, and it's like, okay, I'm going to go do ministry now, but it's outside of my normal everyday thing. But when we think about interacting with people online, when we think about creating community and really getting to know people, creating real connections, as a YouTuber, as somebody who's in the social media space, and I recognize that there is a real possibility to make true lasting connections out there with people. So I just always encourage folks, don't look at it as I'm doing this for my ministry component, or I'm doing this just for church. You could be doing it because you have a specific desire to share a specific thing. I have a show called How It All Works. We talk about all kinds of stuff, career paths, skill sets, different things that people don't necessarily get a chance to know about, perspectives that people don't get a chance to hear of often, like what is it like to run sound for a major production? And you'd be surprised how that conversation keeps on coming back to faith, even though that's not necessarily the full intent. And I want to free somebody up out there who thinks I've got to make it about faith and evangelism for it to be a part of my overarching goal. I think what we need to be looking to do is to make real lasting connections with people. And when we seek to do that, one of the best ways to seek to do that is to share yourself, your true, authentic self, not the polished version that we put on Sabbath morning, but the stuff that we struggle with. The communities that I really connect with are folks who, like me, may have imposter syndrome or suffer with OCD or different things that I know are weaknesses of mine. Those are the folks who really resonate with me. Those are the folks who I feel God has uniquely called me to talk with and commiserate with and talk about how we win the victory over these things. And it's a very easy way to then pour in what I know God is doing in my life. That's what I wanted to share, Sam. I hope that that's in line with what we've been talking about. But yes, I think there's so much of a need for us to really get into that space, because for far too long, I think the devil's kind of had free reign, right, in some of those spaces. So the more that we can see us in those spaces, I think just being us. And I don't mean to say we're in there doing an evangelistic series. I think just like what we're doing now, just having an open conversation with a very loose agenda where we're just kind of talking. We're trying to figure out these things. And that's why I love that's why I picked the title, How It All Works, is because we're really just trying to figure out, how these puzzle pieces fit together and what could be another way. And hearing different perspectives is so powerful, because it's not necessarily like a better or worse, right or wrong. It's just a different way of doing things. And I love to hear those nice aspects. Yeah.
There is a fundamental educational element to How It All Works.
Yes, indeed,
which is the foundation of YouTube. You're there to learn.
Yeah.
It's the largest learning platform in the world. And
absolutely,
we need to tap into it because we have a couple of things that we need to say.
I think so.
And so we need to just say it. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Pastor Andre.
Yeah. If my Achilles wasn't so tender, right now I feel like running around my office. This conversation, and it's nice to meet Kirk and the other two that were on here before. One of the things that I'm hearing in this conversation is a need to change who's in the front chair leading the conversation. And I say this respectfully as a pastor. Generally speaking, as pastors, we are the ones that are chairing these meetings. But this technology piece is to some degree out of our scope of purview. And so I wonder what evangelism and church would look like when you have people that are developing apps, those that are doing conversations about all kinds of things. I think by having those individuals in the room steering the conversation, those of us that have a theological background, we can do the exegesis. But the technology piece, that's something that is fairly new to a lot of the pastors. And of course, Pastor Sam, I know that you know this. In North America, our pastors are aging. So because we are getting older, some of the technology that's going to move us for real into the 21st century, we didn't talk about it at the seminary or undergraduate studies, but this new group. And so I kind of just wanted to say that because this to me is exciting. To some degree, somebody's going to have to go back and say, do we need to tweak our mission and vision and core values organizationally to now tackle the reality that the pew is no longer the primary space for the dialogue about Jesus? And if you go online and your pew is in the shot, you've now lost 30 to 40% of the individuals who believe that the church is a mystical space. So having somebody like, these web designers and Kirk, who's responsible for these conversations, by doing that, it now allows the pastor to understand the mindset. It's not just millennials and Gen Z. No, that's not just the conversational piece. The issue is, do we understand how information is flowing now to connect with this group that we've never had access to before because they didn't grow up under Pathfinders and Adventurers? This conversation is incredible. That's what I want to say.
Thank you. Excellent. A question here: can we have a centralized training center for technology and so on? The answer to that is yes and no. So yes, it's desirable that there are some resources at the conference headquarters, union headquarters, division headquarters, general conference headquarters. But the rubber meets the road in your local church.
Yes.
And only you understand the reality of your local church and your own members. And it is precisely your members that need to get involved in the learning, in the development, and so on. Why? Because they need autonomy, they need mastery, and they need purpose. And they need to develop those things for themselves. So we have a channel called GAIN, GAIN, .adventist.org, gain.adventist.org. And I'll add here to the chat. This is the technology community and learning of the Adventist Church globally. And we bring in best practices from different parts of the world. We have a YouTube channel that we started with all kinds of training and conversations and discussions and so on. So this is a good resource for you to have a look at.
Oh yeah.
I have a book club there. I'm just looking at the website here. It reminded me where we go through 13 books on branding, digital marketing, and leadership, which you may find interesting. So that's a series of books there. In terms of to answer that question more specifically, that's what we've got. If you can think of a way of creating resources, we're happy to publish there so that it could find its usage in different parts of the world. There is a church in the world that is just like yours, and whatever you do, maybe they will be useful to them. So this is the sharing part of that. And that's really what the General Conference is here to do. It's not to tell you what to do, but to tell you that other people are solving amazing problems elsewhere. Check in with them. So that's the one of the reasons for GAIN existence. Here it says social programs that include our community we have found to lead evangelistic results to new people. It says we may really not need church buildings to grow the church. Okay, that's a realization that the first century church understood very well.
That's good.
And perhaps this pandemic, one of the positive things is that we will learn that the things we thought were limitations were actually opportunities. And the things we thought were opportunities, like church buildings, were actually limitations.
Wow.
So it's a shift that we need to work with to find out what is useful and what is not. And somebody said we need to reinvent ministry. Ministry has been reinvented every generation since Jesus. You know, the reality changes constantly, and some things work, some things don't, and we need to learn and change and adapt. Pastor Jeffy, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate what has been said, especially in light of us finding a new methodology, especially during this time. And I want to say we are not calling for redefining our message as an Adventist movement.
No.
But in parentheses, still, I want you to put as the Lord enlightens us, because we want to stay present truth. Amen, somebody. But we are saying we want to change the vehicle, the methodology. And I think we have been stuck up as a church because we are so much, somebody said, heavenly minded, that we're of no earthly good. So when we see these new advancements, some people get scared because they think 5G is the mark of the beast. Some people are even afraid of taking the COVID vaccine. But I love what Kirk has said, that we need to harness the people who the talent has been given to. And Andre also did say this, my pastor, that we have the exegesis. He didn't mention the hermeneutics, so I'm critiquing him as a heretic. But we have the complete message. But in as much as some people might not have the full light, we then come as the foundation, but we should allow those who God has gifted with gifts to be the ones who are actively assisting us and not taking the back row as if those people who don't have the message have no part in the mission. And I'm talking about people here who some are not non-Adventists. I have worked with Pioneer Memorial Church while studying at Andrews. We, as a lot of my members here where I've been at Windsor Church, they tell you of how great the broadcast at Pioneer Memorial Church, Oakwood University. But I want to say you can't expect a mega church experience with a $5 budget. If we are going to really talk about outsourcing, we need to put our money where our mouth is. And I know, man, I'm a young person who's causing trouble. Should I mute here or should I continue going? Maybe the Lord will reveal more. Let me
preach.
You stopped. I wasn't expecting that.
No, you're muted. You're muted.
I'll come back when the Spirit reveals more power.
I see. Okay. Okay. Let's.
Sam, I wonder if I could just interject here.
Please.
Because I can't stay too long, but I just love the conversation, and I definitely resonate with some of what Jaffe has shared, having been in the church for all my life and worked in various capacities, CIO, CTO, in South Africa as IT director at Oakwood University as CIO, and then working in media in multiple capacities. I know what he's talking about. There is a sense that there are these big powerhouse media outlets in the Adventist church. And for a lot of us, we are looking to those big powerhouses as an example of what effective online ministry looks like. But I want to challenge us to really, in two ways. Number one, what Jaffe said is absolutely correct. An investment must be made, but I don't believe an investment should be made unless you actually have a calling. If you feel like God has uniquely gifted you to go into the online space, into the media space, and to really set up a platform like a Breath of Life where it is written, or what Pioneer Memorial has, or what they've got at Patmos in Orlando, Florida. If your body of believers, your specific body believes that you have been called to do that, then by all means make the investment. And to be clear, the investment is what it is. We can't balk at what the investment is. But if you haven't been called that way, I want to challenge you to start thinking about other ways that we can be salt and light to people. Here's the thing, and Sam said this earlier. YouTube is not only a great learning platform, it is the number 2 search engine in the world, number 2 only to its parent company, and that is YouTube. Google, right? So here's the piece. It's a search engine. And so the question we need to ask ourselves is, what are people searching for? Just do that real quick. What's the number 1 search topic that people are looking for on YouTube? It usually fluctuates around 1, 2, or 3, but it's purpose. Now, what do you think? Do you think we have something to offer in the area of purpose? And this is the piece that I think we kind of get really complicated, and we want to do all this other stuff. But the truth of the matter is, if you don't have any content, there's really no reason to get the whole media set up and the lighting and the cameras and all that stuff. And I know I say that even though I'm sitting in my home studio, but if you don't have content to share relevant to what people are searching for, then there's really nobody that's going to be listening. And that's really the point, is to share content that is answering a question, that is meeting a need. And even as you do that, inherent in the conversation will come out what is in you. And that is, of course, if you have deposited in you Jesus deep down in your soul. So we don't need to manufacture it. We don't need to mimic what some of the big powerhouses are doing. I even hate to say big powerhouses, because there's so much power in what you can do on YouTube. I know a young lady who is doing natural hair care, and she's got like 15,000 subscribers on YouTube. But when she does a call for a Zoom meeting on Bible study, nothing to do with hair care, for her subscribers, she gets over 500 people in that Zoom room. What I'm trying to say is that the people don't necessarily only resonate around the topic, they resonate with the person, because even online, the connection is real with the person. We always say, in these circles, content creator circles, you are the brand, right? So people connect with you. And when they connect with you, if Jesus is in you, guess what they just connected with? They connected with Jesus. And so somebody will say to you, hey, Sam, hey, Jaffe, hey, Andre, there's something special about you. I wonder what that is. And you can say, hey, let's jump on a Zoom meeting. I would be happy to share. And these are the opportunities. These are the quote unquote entering wedges, even though I don't want to use some of that terminology. It's somewhat off-putting, missiology and evangelism and crusades. I think what we need to really focus in on is making real connections with people and recognizing that the digital space that we're in now is not an excuse for us to not have the real one-to-one digital personal connections. Those personal connections really are our window into creating a space where folks can come to a saving knowledge of the truth and really meet the man Jesus Christ. But he's got to be inside. So there's just so many different pieces there. I think there's the basics that we always talked about in the Adventist church, having that personal time with God, making sure you're connected to the source before you get out there to share whatever the content is you want to share. So if you're in the tech space like me, then share it. If you're an architect person, then share that. But whatever God has uniquely called you to do, there is an audience, there is a community that is waiting for you to get out there and share that message. And I don't think we need to, outsource this to just the pastors, outsource this to just the big media houses. I think the one-man shop who's got a YouTube channel with 7,000 subscribers is going to do far more than say a Breath of Life can, because it's so structured, it's so formal, and you can't shift on a dime. And so these are the things that I really wanted to share and to get into the conversation, even as I may have to take my leave here in the next 10 minutes or so. But I'm, again, so excited about these kinds of conversations and how we can engage around them. And hopefully we can continue this as a way and a means of us being iron sharpening iron, and so that we can actually get out there and do some things that are more practical, that are on the ground, right? Rubber meeting the road, where we're actually taking these principles and putting them into practice.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those very insightful thoughts. Sometimes we get hung up on the over 100,000 followers, and we forget the kind of structure that takes to scale and to follow up and to minister to people individually. So that was a good reminder that having hundreds of engaged followers is much more beneficial for a local church than having, all of this. There is room for channels with hundreds of thousands if they have the structure to use it. In the beginning of the pandemic, we set up a 24-hour team for the church channel, and another 6 or 7 full-time people looking at how to empower the channel. I think tomorrow we're going to cross 100,000 followers. So that's we started with 15,000 last year. So it's a good progress. But this is the role of the church, the global church. A local church does not have to invest such resources unless they have that calling. The other thing from what you were saying, Kirk, is one of the biggest mistakes I've made as a pastor in this area is to buy equipment for a team that wasn't ready. Don't buy equipment for a team that isn't ready. You kill them. So, wait, maybe you have to wait a few years until they are ready to handle this next equipment. So that's something important to look at. Pastor Andre.
Yeah, I just want to say something in short, because I don't know if we're going to get to this in this conversation. I think it's also important that conferences now begin to have the conversation. Somebody put it in the group, so I don't want to make it seem like it's my idea, but the idea around a church without walls, right? I mean, the reality is in Toronto, right? The GTA, you have multiple churches, different sizes. Well, what would happen if we all decided to throw our best resources at a quality program so that every single Sabbath from 10:30 until 1 o'clock, we knew that there was quality programming? And when I say quality, I'm not saying that smaller churches don't have quality content. I'm just simply saying that when I look at some of the backgrounds or some of the lighting, all of these different things help to enhance the experience of the individual that is now watching, wanting to learn something. So I really think that the challenge is, again, we keep talking about the local church, but by definition, are we talking about that pre-pandemic or are we talking about that post-pandemic? Because once we come out of this pandemic, the church is going to look different whether or not we like it or not. There's going to be a bunch of people that rush through the doors that still have smoke on their breath because while they were drunk and at home by accident, their hand hit a button and now they're at one of our churches. So what are they going to encounter?
Oh, internet, come back. You can do this. I really wanted to.
Through the door. What are they going to see? What are they going to, that title?
You cut out there, but
Yeah.
I think we got the idea, Pastor Andre. Thank you for that. Yeah. Let's try to land the plane here. Pastor Bob, what are your thoughts? Try to summarize from your perspective.
As a pastor, my first ministry is still my church family. And God is still doing something at Nepean. And my job is to invite other people to be a part of that. And social media is allowing me to do that on a scale I've not been able to do that before. I have to take into consideration as we build a social media platform and a tech platform, I have to ask myself is what is God still asking us to do in the world? And then do we have the tools and resources to do it? Because you've got to ask yourself, what are we doing? Who are we aiming this for? We've got to ask the right questions and to consider the right audience before we apply the right tools as solutions to helping us achieve those ends. And so I'm asking, where's God still leading? What is he still wanting to do in my church, through my church? And we're inviting other people to be a part of it. And so we're still having, our worship services, our Sabbath school programs, but we're also reaching out and beyond. We're still doing coping with depression seminars. We're still going to do the marriage seminars. And those are different tools than my worship service. So you get to ask yourself, what is it you want to do and who are you doing it for and what are you hoping to achieve? And do you have the tools to do it? And those are you've got to ask important questions and make sure you know what you're after and what God is wanting to achieve through you. And that's what this tech is all about. It's still about achieving God's will in and through his people. And at the core of that is still the church. And I agree with Andre, when our church comes back, it's going to look different because people are watching, they're checking us out, they're being a part of this. I've got people signing up for Bible studies and baptisms who've never stepped in through the door of the church because God's still at work in the world, but he's still at work in the world through his church.
Yes.
And so the church is still alive and it's still active because we have asked the questions, what is it God is asking us to do through his church?
Excellent. Thank you. Allison, what are your final thoughts? You're muted. And considering that's the first time I'm saying that today, I think it's a great thing. We managed very well. Nope, still muted.
Okay, it didn't want to unmute the other with the space bar. Going on Bob's comments, we have to ask the good questions, but we also have to ask the hard questions. The hard questions that cut to the quick. How many buildings do we really need? As Pastor Andre said, in GTA, we have 100 and some odd church buildings in the GTA. Do we really need to spend the money in buildings? Is it, where did Jesus work? He was out in the world. Where did the disciples work after Jesus went back to heaven? They worked in the world. And as Bob said, the world is our workplace. And it's the church body, the people of the church that need to get out of their comfort zones of being inside the four walls, comfortable pews and so forth, and be out there and making connections with people. I don't see us going back to our churches. I mentioned it to you last week, Pastor Neves, that you probably will not be going back to a 3,000 member church. You'll probably be in with that 25, 30 member group that you have developed relationships with.
Yeah.
And so we really need to ask some really hard, tough, deep down, heart, painful, gut-wrenching questions. Are we using our money wisely?
Yes. Good point. Pastor Jeffy. Final thoughts.
Today, I also want to do like the last time, nothing special, but I just want to end with an acronym again. Is that okay? Maybe that's my signature now.
Go for it, sir. Next time you need to find another acronym to be consistent.
Sounds good. I've been in an emergency recently, and somebody told me I need to learn but I need to learn the function of CPR, which is cardiopulmonary resuscitation. This is deep English here. But what I want to say as I part here is that instead of CPR, just for our churches as we know it, CPR in collaboration for C, in P for people, and R for resourcefulness. And I say this for us as pastors. We might be here happily seated today, but the fact is there's a lot of competition that pastors face, and one is trying to climb the ladder more than the other. But I'm here to say, just like Pastor Andre said, let's collaborate. Let's collaborate. If somebody has a special idea that they're doing at their church, ask them, how are you doing it? If there's something that you are doing at your local church, let's have the humility to collaborate. My friend, how are you doing this? How are you getting that lighting? Collaboration. People. I think we are working with people, and we've all agreed that people are why we are all here, trying to realize and trying to dialogue on how God wants us to minister to his people during this time. I know Pastor Damson always says people are not going to, and by the way, Pastor Damson is our ministerial director. He says people are going to forget what you said, but they are not going to forget how you made them feel and what you did for them during this time. So let's get out there in the trenches. In the words of my senior pastor, Kolovenko, he says, it's time to remove suits and ties, and let's get dirty and wear some work suits out here. I love tuxedos. I love to wear a good suit. But like you see today, I'm trying to live what I'm preaching. And then R is resourcefulness. I think we have reiterated this, and I just want to give this parting shot to say, let's be creative during this time. Let's have seasons where we are willing to try many different things. A wise man said a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. So even if you don't know, take that first step. If you fall down, we'll come and CPR, resuscitate you. But let's be resourceful during this time. May God bless us.
Thank you, Pastor. Pastor Jesse.
Well, since this is perhaps my last time to talk, allow me to thank Christelle once again, the communication team of the entire conference, for having me here, being a part of this great group of people engaged in this conversation. Anyhow, my last word is, if there's anything positive at all, I believe one of the things that has come out of this challenge is that it has helped us, hopefully, to help people see that they are the church. And And that even in these times when we can't necessarily be in the building, we've been challenged to help people find ways to stay connected to God and to find their own inner resources, to work in spirituality in different kinds of ways, and then to stay connected with each other through technology, whether it's Zoom, which has become very popular, WhatsApp, and other forms of communication. Now, one more thing. Many people are looking for answers right now. In fact, I've just texted one of those who connected with one of the members of our church because she was about to have surgery 2 weeks ago, and she connected with one of the members of the church. We were having our 10 days of prayer at that time, and we invited her to be a part of a group doing the prayer every night. And so just a few hours ago, she texted me, Pastor, she told me, and she's not a member of our church. The surgery was a success. She went through surgery today. The surgery was a success. And she's very thankful for the ministry of the church that we have done for her. We haven't seen her. We only saw her through Zoom. I only communicate with her through text and through phone. And yet here, God is at work in bringing people to himself. People are more open, more receptive during times of crisis. And we just have to be sensitive to how God is presenting these people to us. And we need to be ready to be able to use technology to be able to connect with these people and to connect them with God. While this pandemic does not come from God, he will use this pandemic to further the cause of his kingdom.
Amen. Thank you. Pastor Andre, your last thoughts, and then I'd like to send it back to Christelle.
I want to say this to Christelle, like this thing that she's doing through our conference, she has no idea how incredible this thing is. I'm just grateful to be here to listen to what everybody's doing. And I know that my church is watching. And so I suspect that they will also be talking about implementing some things as well out of this conversation. They say flattery is the thing that you do when you're really impressed by something that has been said. To all of the panelists, you've all said different things, but Pastor Jeff, those short forms. And so therefore, I came up with one to end this one, okay? And it's TNT. The dynamite I think that we have to leave with this thing is transparency and transgenerational. Those are the two T's that are the takeaway for me. Number one, if you're not transparent, then other people will not be transparent in sharing the information that moves the organization forward. Transparency. Number two, though, transgenerational. When I look at this panel, Christelle has been very intentional not to just have one generation sharing the information, because we all have blind spots regardless of what our age is. And so by putting people in the room, and of course, our church has moved away from that globally, in that we now have youth this and seniors that. But by doing so, we have created gaps, which is why when a pandemic hits, our seniors may not be so quick to understand the technology, because their children and grandchildren are no longer in the room with them when it comes to worship, unless it's at home. So all I want to say is we have to be more transgenerational. We have to be intentional to, just as we talk about Black Lives Matter, all lives matter in the context of church. And when we allow people to be in front on the microphone, saying something that matters from the pulpit, we're actually saying what they have to say is important. And then, of course, finally, transparency. As pastors and leaders, we have to admit we need help during this pandemic. One may be a great orator, one may be a great counselor, one may be good with technology, but if we come together through that transparency, I think we will build a better church coming out of this pandemic.
Thank you, Pastor Andre. I'll go to you, Kirk, in a moment. I just want to make my own summary of this, and then you can have your last comment. A couple of things that were mentioned, especially just now, in terms of working together with a team of pastors. I've always dreamt of ministry being a team effort, but you'll always run into this geographic problem, and my member, your member, and all of this. And all of that ends when you come to the digital. That's the beauty of it. You could have, a vigil organized by one church that is attended by 6 others. And you could have one that focuses on health on a Monday, on job security on a Tuesday. And then you can have an entire region or parts of the world all connecting to that, because people will connect with the people they want to connect. You can't force it. It just happens. But you can have that team ministry possibility. And in terms of this intergenerational thing, this is so important. In the last church I was serving before moving to where I am now, we had like 90 teens. It was a large church, and and lots of old people too. They had, I don't know, 200 old people, it seemed. And they didn't really connect very much. So we created the something called Story Night, and it was a trial where you have a group of teens invited by a parent to a house. Do you remember when we still went to each other's houses? It was beautiful. So they went to a house, and we invited somebody from the church that was over 70 years old, and there were plenty of them. And they would come and tell their story. That's the extent of it. They would eat some nibbles, and they would tell their story. And the teens would ask questions about their story. When did you meet your wife? How was it? If both spouses were still alive, and so on, they would come together and tell their story and so on. And the thing that happened is, when they came to Sabbath morning, the teens were walking past these old people and acknowledging them and saying hi to them. And they could not hide the amazing feelings that the elderly had within them. To be greeted by teens and to be respected and to be in the context of a community is so meaningful, right? We talk about the blue zones. You have Loma Linda, you have Italy, and you have Japan. Now, I come from an Italian family. You could say that Loma Linda, they eat properly, and Japan maybe eats properly, but I know that Italians don't. Right? A true good Italian family eats pork for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but they still live forever. And the best indication as to why is that the elderly are respected. In Loma Linda, they are respected in Italy, and they are respected in Japan. Nonna is nonna. You don't mess with nonna. That's the Italian grandmother. And if you see a nonna on the streets, whether it's your grandmother or not, you will respect, you will say hi. If you're making noise and nonna comes around, you'll be quiet because it's disrespectful and so on. And so there is this dynamic within a local church of multi-generation that we need to restore. We need our teens to admire and to connect with the elderly. We need the elderly to add so much learning and value and everything that they learned in their lives to young people. And the more this happens, the less bitter and lonely the elderly will be, and the more life they will have. And of course, the more experience, the more, think of a teen that has dealt with and worked with and knows how to behave around the elderly with respect. Imagine that teen being 21 years old and going on a job interview for the first time. They are so far ahead of every one of their peers who don't have intergenerational contact. So for multiple reasons, I really want to iterate that this technology thing cannot further divide us. And I often thought, let's have story night on Zoom. I mean, it's safe. It's even easier than trying to organize people's homes. And then you begin to get to know these stories, and you can show pictures, and you can show, I've been, maybe I'll suggest it to my local church here, but we need efforts so that technology doesn't further segregate us and fragment us, but actually that bring us together. Kirk, you had some thoughts, and then I'm handing them back to Christelle.
I just wanted to share for, I don't know what the makeup of the audience is, but I know the panel here largely are pastors, and I love the perspectives that has been shared. I just feel that the position is mine to speak to some of the creatives out there, to some of the folks who don't necessarily have the title of pastor, and they're wondering, how can I get involved in quote unquote ministry? One of the questions I often get as an IT professional having been a missionary to the continent of Africa, what from young people was, how did you become a missionary? They didn't ask me, if vibranium was real. They didn't ask me if, how do you say hello in Xhosa? They asked me, how did you become a missionary as an IT guy? And I always found that to be very interesting, because what I recognized as they would ask that question is because they didn't see themselves as mission worthy. Like, you have these technical skill sets, you have these media skill sets, and it's like, can God use these for his glory? And I'm saying to them, yes. My response to them every time, and I hope it freed them up, and I'm hoping it frees somebody up as we close out here today. My response to you who are sitting there with these skill sets wondering, can I be used for ministry as well? The answer is a resounding yes. My answer to those people who would ask those questions is that as an IT guy, God has entrusted me with these unique skills and talents. As a media guy, as a communicator, God has entrusted you with these unique skills and talents for his glory, and he will require it of you because you too are a minister. I just wanted to let that be known. I wanted to share that with somebody out there who may just be thinking like, well, I can't preach the gospel. I'm not a pastor. I don't necessarily have organization skills and some of these things that I've traditionally seen in the church. But I really want people to recognize that what we need to do, especially in the confines of our denominational construct, is to broaden the definition of the minister. Whatever God has entrusted with you to do, whatever your skills are, those skills can be used for ministry.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Christelle, I think we're done. And 3 minutes to spare. How about that?
Okay, I'm seeing two of me. Bear with me anyway.
The world will be better off for two of you.
Oh, thank you so much. So, yeah, it's been such an insightful 2 days. Today, I've just gotten so many gems, and I wrote down a few. So one is collaborate. And I think that's something that I'm personally seeing more and more is churches are collaborating. They're finding ways that they can pool their resources, their human resources, their ideas, their finances, and really reach a broader population. And I think that's awesome. Another is, and this is my big takeaway from Kirk's, the different things he shared, is authenticity is really important, especially on the online space. People will be able to tell if you're putting on, basically, and the authenticity is what will draw them to you. And as you are getting closer to Jesus, hopefully it will draw them to Jesus as well. So that was something that really touched me. Another thing was, we might look at technology as a thing that's, to be feared, but it can actually help us to stay connected. And something that Pastor Jesse said, he said that God will use this pandemic. He didn't bring the pandemic on, but he will use this pandemic to further his kingdom. And that's something that I truly believe. And I also really love the story of what's in your hand. I refer to that often. So God has given us all kinds of tools that we can use to serve him, including technological tools. So that's another point that has come out this evening that I really appreciate. So we can, even if we're not a tech person, there's still a way in which we can contribute to furthering God's kingdom. And I will just also mention TNT, transparency and transgenerational. So the different generations, as we can even see with this panel, they all have different perspectives that they can bring. And being transparent, I've just really appreciated the transparency of the pastors and Bible worker and elders and other people who joined our panel, Kirk as well, being a creative. Your transparency has touched people more than if you were trying to, I guess, put on a show. And I didn't feel that at any point. So someone had asked me to give a shout out to their church earlier on. I forgot to do so. So I realized I probably need to give a shout out to all the churches that the panelists belong to. So I'm going to shout out now Bramalea, Philcan, Waterloo Region, Philcan, Cochrane and Kapuskasing, Windsor, Living Faith, Nepean, and Shiloh. And I think that is it. I think I got it right. So thank you for lending your ministers to us for these 2 nights. I know that they have a lot on their plate, and there are probably a million other things that you need them to do, but you allowed them to spend this time with us, as well Orleans and Ottawa French, Pastor Dorzilme. So I just want to thank all of the panelists. I want to thank Pastor Neves just for taking this time to be with us, share your insights and your experiences. I also want to thank people behind the scenes. I'll just name them by first name to save some time. Oh, shout out to Ajax Church from Lance. So Lance is the tech person behind the scenes, and big shout out to Ajax Church. So thank you to all of you for supporting your ministers and church leaders here. So I also wanted to thank, Lance, who I just mentioned, Rosalind, Sabrina, Andrea, Errol, Gwendolyn, Howard, Janice, Judy, 2 Samanthas, FIFA, Ashton, Orlando, and Maria, who has been here the last 2 days. So just thank you to all of you. And I hope that this will just be the beginning of a really wonderful conversation. And somebody put Scarborough Filipino Church. So shout out to Scarborough Filipino Church as well. And I just want to mention that you should be getting this because you registered. There is a survey that I strongly ask everybody to fill out. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, it should be in the chat. People who are in Zoom webinar will be receiving it in an email. And the purpose is just so that we can know more of what your needs are, how the communications department can better meet those needs. As well, if you give me your contact information, I'll give you a tip sheet based on what we have been talking about these 2 days and other resources. So thank you all for coming. God bless you. And, it's really been a great couple of days with all of you.